is the video guidance lesson for the new Power and Politics unit that you will be studying over the next few lessons. It will involve your teacher playing this video, moving between this video and other resources, and pausing. Please make sure, therefore, when you are asked to do something, you do so promptly. The video will move at the pace of the fastest and not that of the slowest. First thing I'd like you to do, please, is put down the title Power and Politics. Your teacher can pause now, please. The objective for today's lesson is to understand the problems that existed with the British voting system and the British political system in 1832. It stands to reason that if Britain has changed so much, as you have demonstrated through your presentations, chances are that the way in which the country needs to be governed is going to need changing as well. What you are going to do is tell me what was wrong with the British political system in 1832 and therefore what needed to change. And you're best able to do this by comparing this to your understanding of politics today. The first thing I would like you to do is put the subheading, Guess the Politician, and then number 1 to 5 in the margin. Please pause. I'm going to show you the pictures of 5 politicians. I want you to tell me who they are, or who they were, and what their job was. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. You can pause now for students to gather their thoughts. So now I'm going to give you the answers. What I'd like you to do is amend your own answers in green pen, please. Obviously, your teacher can pause at any stage during this. First one then is our current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Number 2 is Jeremy Corbyn. Now, he's the leader of the Labour Party and he's sometimes referred to as the leader of the opposition. Number 3 is Nicola Sturgeon. She's the First Minister of Scotland. There's a clue there in the flag to her left. Fourthly, Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister during World War II. And finally, Margaret Thatcher, Britain's first female Prime Minister. Okay, so again, back to our title page. Power and Politics. People who run our country, however disinterested you might be in politics, are people with huge influence on both your lives and our history. If you only know any of those people, that will be proof of that point. What we now have to understand is what was wrong in Britain. Okay, the first thing I'd like you to do now, put the subheading, What does the government do? Then what I'd like you to do with yourself and the person to your partner is I'd like to write down the 5 most important things that you think a government does. I'll pause the video now. When you fed back and shared, you should understand that the government's role in our lives is absolutely huge. But the role our government has today is very different from the role it had in 1832 and hugely different from the one it had in the feudal system or during the Civil War. The constantly changing role of government is an important thing that we have to understand in our country and in our studies. Okay. Now, let's link back this learning to what we've already studied. You should be familiar with these two pictures. Britain in 1750 on the left, Britain in 1890 on the right. A huge change, a revolution, the Industrial Revolution. The text says, the English Civil War brought about a conclusion to the argument about who should rule the country. It would no longer be kings and queens, but Parliament. Our monarchs, our kings and queens could still remain, but their power would be very limited. Yet, if Britain was experiencing a great period of change known as the Industrial Revolution, would the way in which it was governed require changing as well? Now, at this point, your teacher is going to need to pause and go to the supporting PowerPoint and follow the hyperlink from there. What I want you to do is make a mind map of why people might be demanding change. Why might the ordinary people living here be demanding change? Please play this video, link to the PowerPoint, and brainstorm all the reasons why British people might want change. Please pause. So, what was wrong with the political system before the 1900s? I'd like students to make notes around their mind map on these points. So, from 1750 to 1832, no political changes of any note took place in Britain. Britain was ruled in the following way. Only men with money and property could vote. No women, regardless of their wealth, could vote. The House of Lords could overrule any law passed by the House of Commons. Only men could be in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And the important cities of the Industrial Revolution, the new cities that now existed, like Manchester, Liverpool and Birmingham, they had no representation in the House of Commons. And yet places where people used to live but no longer lived did, and these were called rotten boroughs. These were ancient areas in which barely no one could vote, and yet the person who owned the land could actually send an MP back to Parliament to do the work for them. In 1830, William IV became king. He was not a great fan of change, but he felt that if change was to take place, it should be a controlled change rather than one forced on the British people by a revolution. In 1832, the first political change in centuries took place, and this was known as the Great Reform Act. What did it introduce? Well, it got rid of the places which sent MPs to Parliament when no one lived anymore. The 56 rotten boroughs were removed. 30 small constituencies which returned 2 MPs now only returned 1. Newly large cities were given more MPs in keeping with their size. And in general, more middle-class people got the chance to vote. The number of voters in Britain rose from 435,000 to 652,000. But despite all these changes, it was still not perfect. Women were still not allowed to vote. There was only voting for 1 in 7 men, and there was no secret ballot which would allow people to vote secretly, privately. Some people at the time saw this act as the start of a great new age of democracy, whilst others saw it as a great opportunity lost because it didn't go far enough. As we read through these notes, you will be familiar, clearly, that many of these changes have now taken place, and that further illustrates that our government system and power is constantly changing. The change continued. In 1867, there was a second Reform Act. More workers got the vote. The voting numbers increased. And more power was given to the new cities. But still, no women, regardless of their wealth, could vote. Not all men could vote. Many poor men were not allowed to. Not everyone had access to a secret ballot. And, despite 30 million people being in Britain at the time, only 2.5 million could vote. Final reforms took place in 1872 with the secret ballot, and in 1884 a third Reform Act was passed. But again, this still didn't give women the vote, and that would lead to the rise of the groups known as the suffragettes. Now, we've used the term constituency. I just need to explain that very briefly. This is the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England and Wales. And each of these outlines here, these thin black lines, each of these represents a constituency. A constituency is an area of the country represented by one MP. That MP or Member of Parliament goes to London and sits in the House of Commons and passes laws and helps to run the country. The constituencies are all different sizes depending on how many people live in that area. Each of these constituencies has approximately 30,000 voters living in it. Obviously, where fewer people live, the constituents need to be bigger. Our government is elected on the basis of which political party the MP represents. There are 650 constituencies here. The political party that is the first to get 326 MPs elected, that is a majority, half the MPs plus one, the leader of that party, at the moment Boris Johnson, he will be allowed to become Prime Minister. We hold elections in this country once every 5 years. Plymouth is down here, a very small constituency, the one that we are in at the moment, because a lot of people live in Plymstock and the area that your MP represents. Now, what I would like you to do is read the task that is on the board. What I would like you to do is identify as many things wrong with the voting system in 1832. Please pause the video and read the screen. Clearly then, there were a lot of problems with the British political system. The next part of your task will be to watch an episode of Blackadder. And what I want you to do in this particular episode is add to your mind map of all the things that are wrong with the British political system at the time. In this particular episode, Hugh Laurie here plays the Prince Regent. His dad has gone mad, his dad the king has gone mad, and he is running the country as the monarch. Blackadder is his scheming servant, and Baldric works for Blackadder.